Chapter 24 of A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 24. We walked down the stairs instead of taking the elevator. The carpet on the stairs was worn. I had paid for the dinner when it came up, and the waiter, who had brought it, was sitting on a chair near the door. He jumped up and bowed, and I went with him into the side room and paid the bill for the room. The manager had remembered me as a friend and refused payment in advance, but when he retired, he had remembered to have the waiter stationed at the door so that I should not get out without paying. I suppose that had happened, even with his friends. One had so many friends in a war. I asked the waiter to get us a carriage, and he took Catherine's package that I was carrying and went out with an umbrella. Outside through the window we saw him crossing the street in the rain. We stood in the side room and looked out the window. "How do you feel, Cat? Sleepy?" "I feel hollow and hungry." "Have you anything to eat?" "Yes, in my musette." I saw the carriage coming. It stopped, the horse's head hanging in the rain, and the waiter stepped out, opened his umbrella, and came toward the hotel. We met him at the door and walked out under the umbrella down the wet walk to the carriage at the curb. Water was running in the gutter. "There is your package on the seat," the waiter said. He stood with the umbrella until we were in, and I had tipped him. "Many thanks. Pleasant journey," he said. The coachman lifted the reins, and the horse started. The waiter turned away under the umbrella and went toward the hotel. We drove down the street and turned to the left, then came around to the right in front of the station. There were two carabinieri standing under the light just out of the rain. The light shone on their hats. The rain was clear and transparent against the light from the station. A porter came out from under the shelter of the station, his shoulders up against the rain. "No," I said. "Thanks, I don't need thee." He went back under the shelter of the archway. I turned to Catherine. Her face was in the shadow from the hood of the carriage. "We might as well say good-bye." "I can't go in?" "No." "Good-bye, Cat." "Will you tell him the hospital?" "Yes." I told the driver the address to drive to. He nodded. "Good-bye," I said. "Take good care of yourself and young Catherine." "Good-bye, darling." "Good-bye," I said. I stepped out into the rain, and the carriage started. Catherine leaned out, and I saw her face in the light. She smiled and waved. The carriage went up the street. Catherine pointed in toward the archway. I looked. There were only the two carabinieri and the archway. I realized she meant for me to get in out of the rain. I went in and stood and watched the carriage turn the corner. Then I started through the station and down the runway to the train. The porter was on the platform looking for me. I followed him into the train, crowding past people and along the aisle and in through a door, to where the machine gunner sat in a corner of a full compartment. My rucksack and musettes were above his head on the luggage rack. There were many men standing in the corridor, and the men in the compartments all looked at us when we came in. There were not enough places in the train, and everyone was hostile. The machine gunner stood up for me to sit down. Someone tapped me on the shoulder. I looked around. It was a very tall, gaunt captain of artillery with a red scar along his jaw. He had looked through the glass on the corridor and then come in. "What do you say?" I asked. I had turned and faced him. He was taller than I, and his face was very thin under the shadow of his cap visor, and the scar was new and shiny. Everyone in the compartment was looking at me. "You can't do that," he said. "You can't have a soldier save you a place." "I have done it." He swallowed, and I saw his Adam's apple go up and then down. The machine gunner stood in front of the place. Other men looked in through the glass. No one in the compartment said anything. "You have no right to do that. I was here 2 hours before you came." "What do you want?" "The seat." "So do I." I watched his face and could feel the whole compartment against me. I did not blame them. He was in the right, but I wanted the seat. Still, no one said anything. Oh, hell, I thought. "Sit down, Signor Capitano," I said. The machine gunner moved out of the way, and the tall captain sat down. He looked at me. His face seemed hurt, but he had the seat. "Get my things," I said to the machine gunner. He went out in the corridor. The train was full, and I knew there was no chance of a place. I gave the porter and the machine gunner 10 lire apiece. They went down the corridor and outside on the platform looking in the windows, but there were no places. "Maybe some will get off at Brescia," the porter said. "More will get on at Brescia," said the machine gunner. I said goodbye to them, and we shook hands, and they left. They both felt badly. Inside the train, we were all standing in the corridor when the train started. I watched the lights of the station and the yards as we went out. It was still raining, and soon the windows were wet and you could not see out. Later, I slept on the floor of the corridor, first putting my pocketbook with my money and papers in it inside my shirt and trousers, so that it was inside the leg of my breeches. I slept all night, waking at Brescia and Verona when more men got on the train, but going back to sleep at once. I had my head on one of the musettes and my arms around the other, and I could feel the pack, and they could all walk over me if they wouldn't step on me. Men were sleeping on the floor all down the corridor. Others stood holding on to the window rods or leaning against the doors. That train was always crowded. End of chapter 24.